Good evening, everybody. So it is December, which is actually 14 months of ownership for my Porsche 911, but 1 year looks better in the title, and I've been slacking with posting a bit recently due to my, college applications and whatnot and catching up on school and plenty of auditions to handle. So I just wanted to sort of get in and tell the story of my Porsche 996 ownership so far, because I've sort of posted little spurts here and there of little stories, little mishaps and whatnot, and from what anyone can tell, it seems that I've just had a normal Porsche 996 ownership. But, I've had some fun adventures in this car that I've alluded to, and if you just look at my videos, it looks like it's broken most of the time, but actually, I'd say in the 14 months that I've owned this car, it's spent a total of 2 months in a shop and the rest on the road. So, yeah. And I've done a slow and steady restoration process with, little blips here and there of just big projects. But here is the story of my 1 year, 14 months of Porsche 996 ownership so far. So, I bought this car on, as many of you know, Doug DeMuro's website, Cars and Bids, on October 14th, 2020. And my first YouTube video I ever made was in that last November of 2020 about that auction website, and it brought me sort of my YouTube following, thankfully. But Cars and Bids was great because I was able to find this car at just the right time. I was just looking around just in case. I knew that I was turning 17 and I always have dreamed of owning a 911. Sally was my favorite character from Cars. I actually have a full life-sized Sally cut out in my basement still from when I was 3 and saw the movie for the first time and convinced the movie theater to let me take it home. And needless to say, how many years later, I bought myself a 996. And this car was pretty much the right car for me. It was a bit of a fixer-upper. It was down in Florida, and it had fading clear coat, and it had 151,000 miles on it, but what it needed really was just cosmetic restoration and maybe some suspension work, and I've come to learn a few different electrical parts and bits of engine work, but honestly, I thought that it was the only affordable 911 that I would be able to get in any sort of good condition because it had the IMS bearing, RMS, and it had a brand new clutch, brand new brake pads, rotors, and calipers all around. The previous owner was a high-level employee at a very well-respected German car tuning company, and I was like, this is going to be a pretty well mechanically sorted car that just doesn't look all that fancy in the moment, and had seen some things. So, I said to myself, I will see how far this goes, and I asked pretty much every question in the book on the auction. I was the most annoying buyer that anyone could be, but it ended up paying off in the end. I think a lot of people ended up watching that auction because there was a sort of four-way bidding war at the end, but I ended up buying this car on October 14th, 2020 from carsandbids.com for the total of $16,720. Now, with auction fees and delivery, I think it was about $18,000. And so for $18,000, I had a brand new to me Porsche 911. I was the 9th owner. It came on a set of 4 bent 997 lobster claw reproduction wheels that are now garage art because they are not fit to be driven on the road. Mismatched all-season tires in front and mismatched set of 1 all-season and 1 summer tire in the rear. And I'd say for the next 5,000 miles, that's exactly how actually, no, that's not true. That's not true. I'll get there. So yeah, I bought the car, I had it delivered. It took about a week and a half to get here. And thankfully, it was the winter, so a lot of people were shipping their cars to Florida, and it was coming from Florida, so I got a great deal getting it towed back up here from Florida. And yeah, I had myself a 911, and I'll show a quick video of the day that I got it, of it just starting up for the first time. It was mind-blowing, because it has no mufflers, so I'd never heard a muffler delete flat 6 before, and literally the first Porsche that I ever drove was my own. So there's that. And yeah, so the day I got it, my stepbrothers and I washed it in the 35-degree weather that day, and I thought to myself, you know what, I just bought this thing, I might as well just take it for a quick test drive to see if everything works, and there was immediately quite a few problems. So the handbrake didn't work, and that was a bit of a problem. I live in not the hilliest of areas, but my house is on a hill, and I was planning on putting it in the driveway, but that ended up being scratched. So I had my 911 and I went and took it for a test drive, and down the street from my house, with my reader telling me I had 3/4 of a tank of gas, my tank was empty, and unbeknownst to me, the car just shut off in the middle of a fairly main road, and I sort of had to get it to start again and pulled over to the side, and my beloved 911 that I had just got a few hours earlier was sitting by the side of a road, and a friend had to pick me up and take me home, and all I did was just throw a set of old New Jersey plates on, and I drove it around the block just to make sure everything worked, and it did, except for the gas reader, which I don't know if that was something that happened before it was shipped, but I'd like to think that that happened during shipping, because the seller did not state that in the listing, among a few things like the parking brake and whatnot, but it is what it is. So I took it upon myself to just have it towed. I have classic car insurance with free towing, so I had it towed the next day. Overnight, someone had tried to steal the Carrera badging, and I have a funny picture of it just saying Rera, and no one will ever know, but I just glued it back on and did a nice buffing to make it look like it never happened, and no one will ever tell. In fact, when I tell people, they're like, wow, solid job. And one day maybe I'll replace it, but I think just for the nature of this car being what it is, I'll just always keep it that way. So that was the first day, or first few hours of ownership. So I had it taken to the shop. I have a Porsche racing shop down the street from me, thankfully, and they had to replace my gas reader, and they replaced the fuel pump with an upgraded unit, and I thought I was good to go until a few weeks later, maybe actually no, a few days later, I was driving the car. It had been about a month of me owning it, and I had driven it once, and the check engine light came on, and it was telling me I had a misfire, and that was the bank 2 cam solenoid, and so I had to get that replaced as well for a pretty penny. But you know, all good things to be done. The other one had just been done, so I had 2 brand new cam actuators in my car, which is great for a 150,000 mile example, to have 2 new very expensive parts. I didn't have to do both of them, thankfully. And from there I thought it was good to go. And I was, except then I planned a trip to go down to New Orleans and drive my 911 by myself, and I needed wheels desperately. And thankfully, Dayton Custom Wheels in Asbury Park, I'll do a quick shout out, they're not paying me, but they helped me out in a pinch. I got these Panamera 19-inch wheels that are, I don't know if you could probably sneak the one over there, and they just swapped the tires over. I picked them up from them and just swapped them on the car, and they didn't fit. The offsets were completely wrong, but you know what, it did the trick. The tires fit, and I didn't have wobbly reproduction wheels anymore, and I thought, you know what, I'm good to go, until the day before I was leaving for New Orleans. I was at a car meet that was thankfully at my mechanic's shop, and the car didn't start when I went to leave. The car just completely didn't start. So we just rolled it into the shop, and overnight they just messed with some wiring at the ignition switch and handed the car back to me the next day and said, you know, you gotta take the key out every time before you go to start it, or else it won't start on you, and do all these other things, and the clutch switch was bypassed and all this other funky stuff, and they were like, you're fine, you should be good to go, but just don't turn it off when you're refueling. And I was like, okay. And so for the whole way down to New Orleans, the next 2 days, I didn't shut the car off except for at the hotel that I was staying at, which frightened me a lot, because I didn't know if I was going to be stuck in Atlanta, Georgia with my car not working. So yeah, thankfully it all worked. I drove down to New Orleans. It was fine in the warm weather. I drove it all the way back, and then I noticed that I had put probably close to 7,000 miles on it without doing an oil change. And and that wasn't great. So I immediately just sort of left it for a bit of the winter, except for a few times when I took it out to drive it in the snow, which was nice. And I sort of had this routine where I would drive it, notice that I was driving in the salty roads, and then come home and use a watering can that I actually have right over here. I would put a little bit of car soap in a watering bucket, you know, full of water, and pour it on my car, and then wipe all the dirt away. And both my cars are ceramic coated. I meticulously ceramic coated both of them over a few day period. And so, you know, all the salt came off, and I would sort of, you know, get under and scrub the suspension and whatnot. And I was a nut about it. My family thought it was crazy. I'm just an enthusiast, you might say. So, yeah, so that was that. I think I went on a few more fun drives in the winter and whatnot, and I took it out probably more so than I should have. I remember I spun out once in the snow, because remember, my rear tires were summer tires, or one of them was, and my front tires were all season. So I would get this great grip in the front, and the rear would just slide, so I was drifting everywhere when it would snow out. And I really shouldn't have been driving my 911 in the snow, but I was having a blast. And then came, I'd say about March. I was like, you know, it's time to change some things. I finally want to start changing something. I was thinking of a way that I could start to redo the suspension. And then I had a bit of an accident in the ice where I was coming back onto my driveway, and it was at nighttime. I went out to get gas, and I came back home, and I was by myself. Opened my garage door, went to pull in, and I hit the gas a little bit at the base of the driveway. And from the time that I had left that afternoon to the time that I had got back at around 7 p.m., the water at the base of my driveway had frozen. And, you know, March in the Northeast, you have massive snow piles on either side of the driveway, which had melted during the day and frozen when the sun went down. So I hit it, and there was a massive dent that I'll show on screen in my rocker panel. So I called up the shop, and I called up my insurance company, and I said, look, this is what happened. No need to fix it. Let's fix it in the cheapest way possible. And the insurance company replied with, just go get a quote, see how much they need to do to fix it, and we'll help you with it. And I was like, okay, all right. With classic car insurance, you know, they have a little bit more leeway, so the shop then quoted me on fixing the side. They said that they were just going to match it down the side and then match it on the other side. And I was not expecting this. The shop repainted parts of the car that they hadn't even quoted me on, I think, because they had extra paint and had it in the shop. So they ended up repainting a bunch of faded clear coat on the rear that they didn't need to, and then polished it all to match. And it was actually relatively affordable for me. I threw in some extra stuff there that I funded. And while it was there, I had them fit oh God, what's it called? Oh God. Eibach, that's it. I had them fit the Eibach Pro Kit with the adjustable sway bars that are much thicker than stock, and the and the spring. They call it the GT3 kit because it's GT3 spec sway bars and height, but I don't actually, it's not a GT3 suspension on this car entirely, although it came with Bilstein B6 dampers or B8 dampers. It has upgraded dampers on it, so it rides a lot better than stock. It rides a lot sportier. I could take it to the track. I haven't gotten around to it yet. I did just turn 18, so there's that too. But hopefully in the spring, I'll be out at the track with this car. And then, so that was about a month. That was the first part of March into the last part of April. And then I finally got the car back. You know, I was going to meets with the fresh paint and everything, waited a bit, and then fully ceramic coated it. And you could see all this in previous videos of mine. But then I came to the conclusion that I needed new tires, and I thought, you know, it's a time to do the wheels also, because I was down to the threads on my rear tires on the mismatched set. And I was like, you know what, this car looks the part now. It should probably drive the part the rest of the way, because these like 25-pound each Panamera wheels were not suiting the car, and the new suspension especially, as well as they could have been. So I went, and I always seem to get a little bit lucky with buying stuff. I always tell people I never pay full price for anything. I refuse, because there's always some sort of deal to be had, especially with car parts and whatnot. So Tire Rack was having a some sort of liquidation on OZ racing wheels in the exact size and color that I wanted. And so I ordered myself a set of 18-inch GT3 widths, front and rear, OZ racing wheels. And so they came. I put a set of Continental Extreme Contact Sports on. I think the whatever fits and is the sportiest summer tire that fits these sizes from Continental. A little bit more affordable. I like the Continentals that are on the Stealth, so that's what I went with. I had those fitted, and then I was at the point that I wanted to be when I got the car. And yeah, and that was about, I'd say, 7 or 8 months into me owning it, and I drove it all summer. You know, with coolant issues here and there that also happened, but you know, that's behind us, thankfully. And I've really enjoyed this car since then. I think the next thing that happened that was sort of major, you know, the nicer I got it, the less extreme I would drive it, and the less frequently I would drive it. Sort of during the summer I worked a lot, and after the summer when I went back to school, I had taken it to school maybe once, and I only go when I'm late to school and park all the way where no one can see me. So, you know, so that's sort of my current situation with it. But I've driven it up to Long Island a lot. I've driven it a lot by myself, finding new roads and whatnot, and that's sort of where I'm at, except the most recent thing that happened is right around my birthday in September, I went to start the car and it didn't do anything. and you'll see my latest video on this car was about that. And so I eventually tried, I tried every diagnostic thing by myself that I possibly could with my tools and my lack of lifts and everything. I was at my local Porsche dealer for an event one day, and they said to bring it over, they'd run some tests on it, complimentary, and whenever somebody says that, I'm like, you are in, I will bring it over. And they ended up diagnosing it to be the crank position sensor and the cable that went from the relays to the starter itself that had been fried from parts of the from the malfunctioning of the crank position sensor also. So I had them do that. It wasn't pretty, but it was definitely needed. They did some other wiring fixes for me, replaced some relays and whatnot, and now that was probably about a month and a half, almost 2 months. The car didn't run, or was at Porsche Monmouth, and it took a while to diagnose it. But you know what? I think that was the universe helping me a bit, because that coincided with me doing all of my college visits and applications. Took away the distraction from me, kept me from getting behind in school, and so now I have my running Porsche 911. I most recently did the oil change myself on it and switched from Mobil 1 to Castrol Edge 5W50, and from what I can tell, it's much better. Once again, knock on wood, I have not burned a drop of oil in, I'd say, what, about 500 miles that I've driven it, which is expected, but you know, on a 160,000 mile 996 with an M96 motor that they all at some point have some form of bore scoring, depending on who you ask, I think I'm doing okay. And I'm sad that I have summer tires and the winter is coming, because I don't know what I'm gonna do to drive it in the winter, or how much I will, but I'm going to drive it every nice day that I can, because I've gone through quite the journey with this car. I'm not going to say how many miles I've put on it, but it's been a lot. I've done many small and larger road trips, especially to New Orleans and back. That I've taken this car to many major life events that have happened to me in the past 14 months, and I'm extremely grateful that I've had the opportunity to get the immense amount of knowledge, connections, friendships, and an internet online community that this car has given me. can sincerely say that owning this car has changed my life. And that sounds extremely dramatic because I'm talking about a car. But I don't know, those of you in similar communities or in this community of 996 owners, you know, if you are in any sort of car community near you, you know, the events that happen, the friendships you make, it is life-changing to be introduced into that for the first time. So I'm extremely thankful. I'm extremely thankful for this car. I'm extremely thankful for you guys, my community, for always giving me tips and stuff and and suggestions and helping me figure out problems. I've definitely been able to diagnose things better through reading comments, and I read every single comment that I get on my channel. So that's the beauty of having a smaller channel. I like being able to interact sort of one-on-one with people in the comments. Yeah, so that's sort of the story so far, the abridged version. You can go more in depth by looking at my videos from the past year with this thing. But yeah, I love this car. I've driven a lot of cars since, a lot of competitor cars since, and I can genuinely say that I think that this 996, with the current suspension, the current engine modifications and everything, maybe it's just because I drive it so much and I'm so attached to it, but this is my favorite car. Like, besides the Stealth. But the Stealth is the Stealth. Like, come on, that's don't even get me started. The Stealth is the Stealth for the reasons it's the Stealth. But if I had to pick, besides the Stealth, my favorite car, sorry, Stealth, you're still my favorite, I would pick this car. It's genuinely my favorite car ever built, other than the Stealth. And yeah, I might be biased. Anyway, so I'm extremely thankful for the car, for you guys, and my plans moving forwards with this 911 are to, I guess, keep it where it is. You know, I think I'm gonna have to get my headlights replaced, and I'm gonna try to find the original headlights and taillights that came on it with the ambers and the white outline headlights. They're not going to be the exact ones that came on the car, but I want it to look how it looked when it rolled off the factory line, to the most part. You know, the OZ Racing wheels are different, obviously, but I want to make the headlights and taillights original. Some light things that I have to fix on the taillights. I might do the PCCM Plus that I could put in there. Just, you know, little things here and there, but I genuinely think that I'm at a point where I don't need to change anything on this car as long as it keeps running, and I just keep maintaining it. It's in a better place than it was 14 months ago, 12 months ago. So that's valuable to me that I've been able to do that to this car. It's been a lot of hands-on work. It's been a lot of work with other people involved. I need to thank Body Motion in Oakhurst. I need to thank Porsche Monmouth, and yeah, there's been a lot of people that have helped me. And I think my long-term plans are, I'm hoping that a company like Singer or somebody, just anybody, makes a, and if anyone has an idea on this and wants to hear me out on this, I could go on an entire rant on how good of an idea it would be to take 996s, like they did with the 964s, and make a resto-modded version, but it's, instead of the best bits of the air-cooled cars, it's the best bits of the non-air-cooled 996, 997, maybe even some 991 elements of any of those cars, right? So, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what headlights they do. Maybe they do the circular ones from maybe a 997 and maybe a front bumper from, I don't know. But I personally think that if a company came out and said, you know, pay us an exorbitant amount of money and we'll make you a from scratch, completely hand-built, Singer-esque, all carbon fiber 911 masterpiece based off of a 996, which the platform can definitely handle, people would flock to do it. All these people doing it with the 964s, they would buy up 996s for even cheaper, and they would build them, and they would be amazing. And I would be the first to donate my car and have them do that. Especially because eventually I might have to rebuild the engine. I know people take them in the 500,000, 600,000, 700,000 mile range with the original engine, which I plan to do, but maybe once I get there, I'll need to I'll need to rebuild the engine, and I'd rather do that and just come out of it with like a Singer 911. But this is extremely long term, you know, when I have the funds in order to do that. But this is my car. If I want to have a nicer car ever, I think I'll just make my car nicer, because nothing's going to replace my car. And yeah, that's my morale. That's my story, my philosophy, where I am so far, where I think I'm headed. Thank you guys, as always, for watching. I genuinely love all of the comments that I get and you guys' support. So I will see you in the next one, but for now, bye camera. Here's to another many years